and we're joined here on Daily Dive, the only live Monday through Friday lacrosse talk show by a legend in very many facets, Joel Feld. And Joel, thank you so much for tuning in to today's show.
Thanks for having me, Mike. It's good to be with you.
Absolutely. And again, I cannot say how humbled I am as an aspiring broadcaster of sorts to be getting some information and just some conversation from a guy like yourself. We know that you're very accomplished. And again, thank you for coming on the show.
It's very kind of you. Appreciate it.
All right. So being that this might be the first time our viewers have ever heard you do an interview, give us a synopsis of what your job in the NLL entails so that fans have a better understanding of who you are and what you do.
Well, in broad strokes, my responsibilities are to manage all of the league's media rights partnerships with our broadcast partners, which currently are ESPN and TSN, as you all know. So that's one part of the job, managing those partnerships and the relationships that we have with our broadcast partners. Oversee all of the league's broadcast productions and its broadcast operations. Also handle all of the digital and social content and communications. And obviously I've got a great team working with me that is responsible for all those parts of our business.
I appreciate the work that you have. Obviously, you have a big umbrella there, so we again admire your work here. In preparation for today's interview, we noticed that you went to University at Albany, which is a well-known lacrosse school. Do you have a background playing lacrosse at any point growing up?
I don't. And when I went to school back in the 70s, it was soccer. That was the big sport at the University of Albany at the time. It was a Division III school. It's now a Division I school, which is great. I had no background in lacrosse. In fact, when I joined the league about 4 or 5 years ago, frankly, I'd never seen a box lacrosse game. And it wasn't until I had the opportunity to join the league that I did a deep dive into what the game was all about and whether it could be a very viable product for broadcast. And I think that it really is. I think it's one of the most exciting sports around, and it's a great television product. And that's why we're here, to try to make it an even better television product for our fans and for our partners. But I knew nothing about the game, so I had to talk to a lot of people and do a lot of studying.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I've told people this before. I'm a newer person in this, and seeing the TV part of it, which is what you do a couple of years ago, is what sold me. So I do admire your work there. Producer Joe wants to know: do you have a favorite team, or I don't know if you're allowed to or not?
I'm not allowed to say that I have a favorite. In a quiet moment, I have a favorite. I have a favorite or favorite teams, but we have to be, and we are fans of all of our teams.
Absolutely. So, what played a part in your decision to take this job with the National Lacrosse League?
That's a great question. You know, when under the former commissioner, Nick Sakevich, hired me as a consultant to take a look at the product, it really didn't have a broadcast strategy from a media rights perspective or from a production perspective. At the time, the league was sort of at a haphazard distribution. It had been on ESPN2. It had been on a couple of games. It'd be on TSN. The league at that time, I think, was launching its first sort of direct-to-consumer product. And from what I could see, the productions were largely just streams of what the in-house or in-arena feed was. And so for me, the challenge was building a media strategy and a production strategy from scratch. And which I think in and of itself is exciting. Building something from scratch is exciting. On the other hand, and importantly, I had to look for what I could see from the in-house broadcast and from attending a couple of games that I went to. I saw a lot of opportunity and a lot of possibility for a really great television product. To, obviously a very high speed, high collision, high intensity game that is played by some of the most accomplished athletes in all of sports. And I just saw a really great opportunity to present a really great product.
No, I agree with you on that. You kind of mentioned this before, but you mentioned the state of the league's broadcasting and content. What are some of the goals maybe you've created, and what are the metrics you have used to gauge how successful you are at
Well,
achieving such goals?
well, the first thing we had to do is present a credible and authentic product to our fans, something where they could easily find it, was easily discoverable, that the production quality would meet the expectations of our fans and partners. Production in and of itself is a very expensive part of our business. And so we had to create an ecosystem, if you will, that upgraded the quality of the product to our fans, at the same time making sure that we were being smart about how we invested our owners' resources and the league's resources into putting out a product that would be on par with or exceed what other major leagues are doing. And we had a very interesting and unusual challenge in that we had to create a product that could be distributed to multiple takers across multiple areas multiple takers among multiple areas. So we have to produce a game that is credible not only for TSN and for ESPN and for our advertisers, but also for our teams who have local deals in those in many of the markets. So on any one night, our broadcasts are being distributed to upwards of 10 different takers, whether it's our highlights team that puts together our highlights, or whether it's our social team that's doing some adjunct work associated with our highlights, to our local broadcasters with our teams, to our national partners. So it was a very daunting challenge to put that all together in time to be able to launch our partnerships with ESPN and TSN now 2.5 years ago. But I think we've accomplished our goal to create a credible, highly authentic product for our fans. Production can always be better, and we have a mantra of continuous improvement, where we break down every single game every single week. We share notes with producers, share notes with our talent, and we're always looking to get better.
No, we appreciate that hard work and the transparency you told us about doing such a thing afterwards. From a broadcasting perspective, what are some tangible changes the fans can expect to see going forward as the league does grow in the broadcasting and content sectors?
More technology, more production enhancements, more things that you might see on a high level NBA, NHL, or NFL broadcast. We're always looking at new technologies. Last year, we introduced what's called the Megalodon RF camera, where the cameraman jumps over the boards in between goals and takes the goal scorer or the team off the floor. That camera is used regularly now as part of NFL and NBA and NHL coverage. So those kinds of opportunities for us to get closer and more intimate with the players and with the coverage is part of what we have introduced and what we will continue to introduce. So it's really more technology. We've experimented pretty successfully, I think, particularly over the last 3 or 4 weeks with our NLL Wired in-game content, where we mic up a couple of players and we produce a piece of video and on our social channels later in the week about with our players and coaches. So it's really about being smart about layering in new technology to be able to tell better stories.
Oh, absolutely. I love the social media this year. I don't know what's changed in the last year, but this season has been great so far. I love it. Every last team's been doing a great job with that.
Well, thank you. We brought on a gentleman by the name of Scott Turkin, who had run the digital and social areas for ESPN Sports Center for many years. He actually had been working with the league for the last couple of years as a consultant, but we brought him on full time this year and completely reimagined the way that we did our social and digital, and I think it's bearing fruit this year. So thank you for the kind words, and I'll pass that along to him.
Absolutely. So I asked Commissioner Frood, speaking of the future again, earlier this year about the ESPN TSN deal, and that contract is obviously expiring. Some have speculated that YouTube could be an option without giving anything away that you're obviously not supposed to. Are there any updates on that that the fans might want to hear?
All I can say at this point is those conversations are ongoing. Anything else,
Yeah,
I really can't talk about. There's nothing sort of super. We're not trying to. We're not. It's not. There's nothing super secret. Just those conversations and discussions are ongoing, and but sometime between soon and the end of the year, we will be able to. Be able to make an announcement about our next cycle of media rights.
that's awesome. So in the past, obviously you've been in this conversation before. What are they usually like when negotiating with potential partners or current partners?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
Like, what are the when in the past? I know you've been part of these conversations before. What are those usually like for potential partners and such?
Well, we have great relationships with both TSN and ESPN, so they're actually very collegial, business-like partnerships and conversations that are framed around what the league's potential is, what it's and meeting the objectives of our media rights partners. So they're, the people that we deal with at ESPN and TSN, we've been in business with them for a very long time in other jobs that we've had. So they're great. They're great conversations, and these kinds of conversations just take their time to play themselves
Yeah,
out. We're not the only people that ESPN and TSN is talking to, so they've got a pretty full plate of people to talk to. So they're, like I said, we have great relationships with both of our partners. They've been good to us, and we've been very happy with the relationship with both partners. They've been great.
absolutely. So last question here. Keeping in mind this is the first time you probably have ever seen our show, but considering that we have the executive vice president of broadcasting content, we would be silly not to ask you, what do you think of Daily Dive? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? At a glance, do you think there's anything we can improve on?
I think the show's great. I have seen your show in the past, so I
Wow.
try to watch as much content as I can about the people who are committed and passionate about our sport. I think that shows like yours have an opportunity to be able to speak not only to the hardcore fans, but to new fans. And part of our mission in the game of lacrosse is to grow the sport. And in Canada, the sport is very well known, obviously.
Right.
In the States, not so much the indoor game. When people talk about lacrosse in the States, more often than not, they are thinking of the outdoor game. So we've got a lot of work to do in the US to educate fans about how exciting this game is. So shows like yours, Michael, I think are great for our collective commitment to grow the sport. And what I found when I first got to the league was there a number of people like yourself who are very committed to promoting and growing the sport. And our job is to try to coalesce together around that, to because we all have a common interest in seeing in growing the game.
Well, I thank you for those kind words. And again, you were awesome. I've wanted to get to the guitar thing, but I know that was in another interview. I know that you're a big musician. I like singing as well. So just I love that you're in a band. That's awesome.
Well, my side hustle is playing in a rock and roll band. So we have a lot
That's
of
awesome.
we have a lot of fun doing that, as long as it doesn't interfere with my day job.
Right. Well, maybe one day we can talk about that. But thank you again for coming on the show, Mr. Joel Feld. You have been awesome, and we look forward to future conversations, and of course, what you bring to the NLL later on.
Thanks for having me, and we'd love to hear from your viewers about feedback. We love feedback, good and bad. It is the only way for us to be able to grow and get better, is to hear people's feedback and comments. So don't ever be shy about sharing those comments with us. We really appreciate that.
I appreciate you again. Thank you so much, and have a great rest
Mike.
of your day,
Good
sir.
to see you. Okay, thanks for having me.
Joel Feld. Hey, that was one of my personal favorite interviews I've ever done. He is very transparent. He is awesome.